Hello, welcome to Until Saturday. It is our Week 3 reaction show. I am David Ubben, here with Damien Harris. And never think it's a slow week in college football because there's always things you never expect. I tried to warn you guys on our pick show. I said, hey, the slate looks a little eh. But you know what? That's when you get some results that you don't quite expect. We had plenty of WTF moments. We had some weird calls. South Carolina, LSU, a targeting to the butt. That's always a tough one. Georgia.
No, you never want that. You never want to target to the butt.
You don't. Georgia almost choking and losing to Kentucky on the road. And KU and Vandy. Guys, what are you doing? Plus, we had a lot of measuring stick games. Kansas State and Arizona playing a non-conference game, but trying to figure out where that Big 12 is going to sort out. Missouri and Boston College playing a ranked matchup in Columbia, and a lot of rivalries. And of course, we've got some voicemails for yours to play. We love hearing from you guys. And you can call our phone line and leave us a voicemail at 316-462-9852. We love hearing from you guys. It's always great sifting through those and hearing what you guys have to say. Hearing from you guys leaving stadiums or with a freshly busted TV from a difficult loss, or from somebody who maybe has imbibed a few beverages after a big win. We like hearing from you guys. It's always great, and it adds a lot to the show, so let us know. Mm-hmm. Damien, we got to start in the state of Florida, which is currently on fire.
Right?
Florida
unless you're in Miami. You're good. But if you're
South Florida,
if you're anywhere else in the state of Florida, it's raining heavy.
Yeah, Tampa, Miami, you're doing okay. But the rest of Florida, Texas A&M beats the Florida Gators 33-20. Had some board meetings on Sunday morning. ESPN reported that they have the $26 million necessary to fire Napier. At this point, it seems obvious that it's a matter of when, not if. It's not working. You've got year 3. I kind of, in some ways, I feel bad for Billy Napier, and I liked what he did setting up the recruiting operation. He seems to understand these, how to run a program and what that means from the recruiting trail and from using the advantages that you have. But at the end of the day, Damien, I said all the time, it's a results business. The results have not been there. The defense has been really bad. The offense has not really clicked. Obviously, they had some issues on the recruiting trail. And then, you have little things. Well, I say little things. The Jaden Rashada saga, the $13 million that was there and wasn't there. I think it's maybe slightly unfair to put that at his feet, but in the same breath, would this happen at Alabama? I really don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, right. Not exactly. A chance. And it's funny because as we're sitting here talking about it, right? When I watch Florida, one thing that I think about is, Billy Napier comes from the Nick Saban coaching tree, right? Mm-hmm. And then you look at some of the other people that have been through that tree, like Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Kirby Smart, and they kind of build like a mini Alabama in their own regards at their new programs, right? Mm-hmm. And I just don't really see anything that would make me be like, oh yeah, he was a part of the Nick Saban coaching tree. Like he's a part of that. He came from that culture. He's cut from that cloth. Yeah, he hasn't done any of that at Florida. I mean, just look at the way they play. Offensively, they have really no identity. Going into the game with 2 quarterbacks, and especially like with the situation that you're in, like this is a dire situation. Like Billy Napier knows that he's on the hot seat, right? And then to me, to go out there and handle the QB situation that he did, that kind of looked to me as if he just had no idea what he was doing. Like he just went out there and was just like, whatever happens, happens. And he just rolled the dice, and it obviously didn't work out. So yeah, it's really weird. I wouldn't expect something like this from somebody, like I said, who was a part of that Alabama family and, who went on to be somewhere else, because, you look at other guys who have coached at Alabama and now they're coaching other programs and they've got top tier programs in the country. I mean, respectively. So, it's pretty disappointing to see. I mean, I definitely feel bad for Napier too, because he is a good guy and, he means well and he wanted to have a successful tenure at Florida, but, it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. And leaving the field to fire Billy Chance that's a bad visual.
Yeah.
That was incredible if you think about the special teams job by Florida. That was 7.
The dulcet tones of Joe Tess guiding us through.
Yeah, in situations like that, like it might be weird, but I try to put myself in Billy Napier's shoes and just imagine like how that would feel for a second, because Billy Napier is a human and like I empathize for him, and like that's not a good feeling, you know what I mean? So it sucks, man. It really does. I feel bad for the guy. I mean, obviously this is a results-based business, and for the University of Florida, I mean, obviously there's a standard and there's an expectation. I mean, we all know that, and that's why I don't necessarily think the boos were unwarranted. But at the same time, you got to feel bad for Billy Napier, the guy. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, like, this business it's very important to us, as athletes, as coaches, it's important to the fans and everything. But there's a human aspect of it too, that you do once you peel back all the layers and you stop worrying about like, oh, who's firing this guy? Who's going to be national champions? You have to feel bad for the guy.
I think he's handled it, as well as I guess you can,
respect. So shout out to him for those post-game comments.
Yeah, after the game, you said I probably would have done the same thing, with the booing and the fire Billy chants. I mean, it's not up to the standard of where they're at. Damien, from a player's perspective, though, when you certainly try to block out to some degree a lot of the noise, but it seems obvious at this point that this is a lame duck staff. I don't envision a scenario in which we're sitting here in 2025 and Billy Napier is the head coach. What is that like for a locker room full of guys trying to, still chase their own dreams, still make the most of the time that they have at Florida, keep an eye on the portal, keep an eye on maybe going somewhere else? What is that like for guys?
Yeah, well, you're hitting the nail right on the head. I mean, all these kids are thinking about is themselves at this point. Like, I'm in such a garbage of situation of sorts. Like, how do I maximize my brand? How do I maximize who I am as an athlete? Whether it be getting into the portal and trying to get to another school that's not struggling as much and, showcasing your talent. Or like, are guys just going to be focused on NIL and how much money they can make this year? You know what? Screw football. I'm just focused on how much money I can get. You know what I mean? Like, screw wins and losses, which I can say, honestly, there are a lot of guys that play at the professional level that think that way. We suck. Screw it. I'm collecting a check regardless, so it don't matter. I just want to stay. I just want to stay healthy and get to the end of the season, so I can go to the Turks and Caicos, go to Bahamas, get to wherever I want to vacation. So I definitely see, which I've never been in that situation, but I could definitely see these guys obviously just looking out for themselves. Just because, I mean, what else would you be looking? I mean, there's nothing to look forward to this, for the season as a team. You don't really have anything to look forward to, and then as a coach, we know Billy Napier is going to get fired, not if, but when, it's evident. So what incentive do these guys have to be, a famous saying is like out of yourself and into the team, right? Well, what incentive do these guys have to be out of themselves and into the team? Like, what team do they really have at this point?
Yeah. Florida's an interesting spot because obviously they've tasted being a dynasty and being the premier program in the sport. Yeah. And so with that, anytime there's a coaching search, the fan base thinks they can just get anybody. They just tap a guy on the shoulder and he comes running to games.
Yeah, please.
That's not how it works.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything with my life right now.
But you throw around, we were joking about some of the message board names, bring Ubben back, Saban's still at game day, Jimbo's free. Kiffin, I think, is somebody that will be somebody that gets some realistic pull at Florida, but I don't know that a lot of the factors that kept him at Ole Miss and stopped him from going to Auburn have changed. And while I think certainly Florida's ceiling is higher, what he's doing at Ole Miss, the roster he's put together in the NIL era, you can definitely make a case that why would he want to go do that when he's got it rolling at Ole Miss? And Florida, pre-Spurrier, outside of Spurrier and Ubben, has not had the kind of success that people sort of associate with Florida. It's not like they just win 11 games automatically every year like some of these other programs. But I will tell you, a more realistic candidate for them. USF plays against Miami. I think it's in Tampa this week.
Okay.
They pull an upset there. Alex Golesh at USF.
Okay.
Gets real attractive real fast.
Yeah,
for the Florida folk. So we'll see. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, not a lot to hit on, from the game itself.
I do want to go back to something that I said, though, because I was sitting here talking about how bad I feel for Billy Napier. What I don't feel bad about is the fact that, like we talked about from the jump, all these donors getting together, figuring out how they're going to pay him $26 million to do nothing. Can somebody explain this to me for these coaches? Because it's so different for athletes, right? Athletes have to go out and perform. Athletes have to go out and they have to stay healthy. They have to play at a high level. They have to do all of these things to make all of this money, to fight, scratch, and claw for every guaranteed penny they can get. But you mean to tell me that a coach can be an absolute mess of a head coach, have a mess of a program, and then get fired and make $26 million to go sit on his couch to do nothing.
It's interesting. So I refer to it as the most lopsided rivalry in college sports, but agents versus athletic directors.
Right.
And even as, we're going toward revenue sharing, toward, the money, you're going to need more money to pay your players in the very near future. We're still seeing agents leaning on coaches and people getting very big deals with a lot of guaranteed money. And I don't know when the market is set that you can go backward. And ultimately it's people making emotional decisions and saying, hey, we can get Brian Kelly, we can get Lincoln Riley, we can get Jimbo Fisher. It doesn't really matter what we're paying him because he's going to win here. Obviously it's going to go great. Let's give him $75 million guaranteed. Why not? And then you get to year 3 and you're like, well, this guy stinks. And it's it's very emotional decisions. And I think people want to imagine that the wisdom that comes with being able to write 8-digit checks, is something different than it is. But at the end of the day, from message board posters to people in the upper decks to people in the 50-yard line at the 10th row to people in the suites to people with their names on the stadium, they're more alike than you would think in the way that they think and the way that they process results.
Right.
So don't expect, a measured decision or all these things because that's not what we've gotten. And we've got decades upon decades of data in college sports to mention that these things play out in ways that don't always make sense. Every Saturday that we hear complaining about targeting and nobody knows what it is. I think that bleeds over onto the field. What are your thoughts about the state of targeting in college football right now?
I think it's such a subjective thing. And I think that's what makes it so hard for people to understand because everybody's idea of what targeting is like a little bit different, right? And I feel like even as I've watched some of these games, like these commentators will bring in these rule analysts and, it used to be, okay, you lead with the crown of your head, automatic targeting, ejection. But now it's like, okay, well, he led with the crown of the head, but he didn't make forcible contact to the head and neck. He didn't really launch. So I don't know. This might not be targeting. And so even there, it's like, well, you're a rules analyst. And I'm somebody who actually really knows the game inside and out, right? And from you to be a rules analyst and to tell me something so subjective, I don't really know what to take from that. So obviously as a fan, thinking about the fans at home, like, they're in even more confusion, like what really is targeting. So I think when you look at other penalties, obviously it's much more, there's a universal understanding of what holding is, what pass interference is, what a face mask is, exactly what those things are. But then if somebody asks you, well, what is targeting? It could be this, it couldn't be this. Maybe if the situation is this, it could be targeting, or he did these things, but it wasn't a defenseless runner or a defenseless receiver, so I wasn't targeting. It's just so subjective. So for me, it's hard for anybody really to point a finger on it. And I think that is what causes so much controversy, on the field between teams when targeting is called. The players are usually confused. Then the coaches are trying to figure out information. The fans are sitting at home confused about, was it targeting? Was it not targeting? I don't think it was targeting. I don't really know what targeting is. It's a big mishmash. I don't really know.
Yeah, well, before we move on to the other game in Florida, we should give A&M a little bit of love. Marcel Reed, great game from him. 250 yards total offense, 2 touchdowns, looked really in command. He was a guy coming out of Nashville that a lot of people really liked. I think he was committed to Ole Miss pretty early on. Tennessee really wanted him. Ends up at Texas A&M, and I'm not so sure he's not better than Connor Wegman. I got to tell you, Connor Wegman, a little bit more recruiting bona fides and a little bit more experience. I would think real long and hard about maybe splitting reps when Wegman becomes healthy and seeing what you got in Reed, because I liked what I saw from him. He gives you a little bit more juice. Texas A&M ends a 10-game road losing streak. They got a good little schedule coming up here with Bowling Green and Arkansas.
It's so funny, Ubben. It's funny that you talk about you want to see them get a little, split a little bit time with the QBs. I literally, after watching college football this weekend, I am on the side of we need to ban the 2 QB system before it even gets started. Like, just ban it. Like, just pick a guy, stick with a guy. Because you're screwing so many people over. First of all, you're screwing both of those guys, right? A situation I think of, like, I'm gonna paint a picture for you. Davis Warren and Alex Orji in Michigan, right?
Yeah, messy.
So it's messy, right? And so I'm not necessarily talking about just this most recent game, but in the season in general. Davis Warren doesn't play good. They throw Alex Orji in there to, change a pace, right? It's third down. Let's get sprinkling some runs. Let's get some QB runs in. Well, what does that do to Davis Warren's head when he's got to go back in the game? Mm-hmm. He's sitting on the sideline like, dang, I really hope this dude doesn't do good. Or he's sitting here like, okay, well, if he does good, then whenever I go back out there, I really have to make a play. That way I don't start being on the lesser side of who's getting the split. So then you go out there and then you start forcing. Then you start just throwing stuff up. And then next thing you know, you're panicking because you're like, oh my God, I'm losing time. Or vice versa. You're Alex Orji and, they want to use you as a change of pace guy. And they want to use you as somebody who gets the ground game involved and but it's a huge threat to the defense, but you never really get a rhythm. You go out there for a run or two and then you're sitting on the sideline for a drive, maybe a drive and a half. Then you go back out there and as somebody who was a pure runner, you need to find a rhythm because you can't just go out there and just pop a big run or pop a successful run. So, even just using that to paint a picture, but just overall, there's so much of this 2 quarterback system or, if this guy isn't getting the job done, then maybe we should sprinkle in a little bit of this guy at certain times. It's like, no, if you've got a guy, stick with the guy until he proves that he does not give you the best chance of winning. Once he does that, then go to the next guy. And then once he proves that he gives you a chance to win, stick with him. You know what I mean? It's too much back and forth. I hate to kill your comment of it, but like it makes me think about like what it does for the players. They're teammates, right? Then you don't know what your game plan is. You don't really know like what's gonna be our flow of the offense today. It causes so much confusion. That's
something I never really thought about is like if you're sitting there and you're a quarterback and it's 2nd and 8 and you got a check down versus you got a hole shot over here that you might think about winding up.
It's a low percent. Like exactly, you've got a guaranteed check down for 5 yards. Take the profit, but you've got like a very low percentage throw that it's like if I make this throw, they're gonna think that I'm the bee's knees and I'm the guy. And then you just start screw it. And then what does that do? That takes away from your team. Then your guy who was sitting there for the check down, then now he's sitting over here on the sideline like, man, I was wide open. Like then you start to lose confidence in him when it's like it might be a mechanism in this guy's brain because of the situation he's in. And that's brought on by this 2 QB culture that somehow has come out of nowhere. Like it's gotten popular in college football, but I hope that they get some reins on it.
I do think the old adage of if you have 2 QBs, you have none is probably more true than not. Over in Florida State. Whew. Damien, we picked this one.
Speaking of needing a new quarterback,
we were all in on Memphis this week. I was nervous about it because I think like Florida State, at the end of the day, it's still a really talented roster, and you're kind of wondering, do they snap out of it at some point? Is Memphis going to be able to hold up on the lines? Can they do the things that you have to do to win a game like that? Well, turns out they can. Memphis was much, much better than Florida State. And that 20-12, I'm not even sure it was quite that close. Florida State dropped. I
don't think the score was indicative of how much better Memphis was than Florida State.
It was not good. And like I said, they couldn't run the ball as well as some of the other teams could on the offensive line. But Seth Hennigan, he was picking them apart. They were able to get some runs later with Mario Anderson in there. And it was a solid game. Florida State drops from 55 to 87 in the Athletic 134. And Memphis goes up to 26 from 34. In my bubble watch, Memphis is the new clubhouse leader for that G5 playoff spot. I think they got a great shot. You look at the rest of their schedule, they got a great shot to go undefeated. They got to finish the job. It is really crowded up there at the top. You got Toledo, you got Northern Illinois, both with 2 really, really good wins. Liberty might still be undefeated. They got the easiest road. It's going to be fascinating to watch. But with Florida State, man, like they
poor Mike Norvell.
It's really tough to watch at this point.
Yeah.
And it's DJU, we've hit on him. I do think that he's definitely not the only issue on the offense. The offensive line was struggling. They got good backs. They can't run the ball. I like Toafili. I like Rodell Williams. They can't run the ball at all.
And it's surprising to me, especially because literally the first drive Florida State had all season, I was like, they're going to be able to run the ball this year. Like, they're going to run the ball well. They're going to beat people up front. They're going to lean on guys. And even if DJU doesn't play well, they're going to be able to rely on the running game.
Yeah,
they're not pissing a drop in the run game. You got Roydell Williams out there fumbling the ball. Like, I'm getting on Roydell Williams because he's a former Bama guy. I know I know who Roydell is. Like, come on. Like, ball security is job security. Hold on to the football.
Was it the first snap the ball comes flying out when he gets a helmet on? As soon as I saw that, I was like, "Oh, Memphis is definitely winning this game."
But it's important though, because again, this highlights a very glaring reality that some people are missing. It's not just DJU. It is it's a large part because of DJU, but it's not just DJU.
Yeah,
like you said, there's guys out there dropping passes on third down, turning the ball over. I mean, on the up front, you're not controlling anybody. You're not really protecting DJU. You can't move anybody in the run game. Defensively, I mean, you can't really stop anybody clearly enough to win. So it's not just DJ, it's everybody, literally everybody.
Damien, is there do you think there's a baseline of pride in a locker room of like, I'm going to play
should be.
But what the task ahead of Mike Norvell, how do you keep a locker room invested when a lot of these guys, not all of them, but a lot of them were 13-0 last year, won an ACC title. You know, you come into this season feeling like you got a lot to prove. And now all those goals that you talk about all offseason are pretty much off the table 3 games into the season. Like, how do you sort of, keep a roster invested at this point? Or what is that like from a locker room perspective?
Well, it's the same situation as Florida. A little bit different circumstances because I don't think Mike Norvell is on the hot seat as of yet. But again, what's the incentive for any of these guys for the rest of the season? I mean, going into this game, I said the only incentive for the rest of the season would to be at least to beat the team that your head coach used to coach at home and give him just a little bit of sleep at night. Let him lay his head down on his pillow being like, you know what? At least I come out of this feeling like I'm at the right place. I left somewhere, came here. I've got a better situation. Mike Norvell did not get that kind of sleep last night. So even with that, I mean, if you can't go out there and do that for your coach, first of all, with the way that they play, it's very evident that they're not worried about just going out and showing that they're competitors, that at the very least they're going to compete. They're going to give it their all. I mean, that's not evident either. So again, I just asked the same question that I asked for these Florida guys. I mean, what's the incentive? I mean, and it's sad that we're even in a generation of where you have to incentivize guys to want to show up and play. But whenever, you give them this freedom and these responsibilities, like they're professional athletes, like I told you, there's plenty of guys in the NFL that show up every single day, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, or even Sunday on game days. Like, man, I'm just out here to collect a check and go home to my family. So I see them in that same breath, in that same regard.
I think for me, when you look at body language, there's so much effort stuff in football. I think number one on that is tackling. But I think, two, you look at the investment. Like, you always see it when you have a team that it's like an underdog, but like they could win, and especially when they get them at home. You get a tackle for 1 yard loss on first down, and the sidelines like exploding. You can see the energy.
It erupts.
You don't see that. So for me, I think tackling in the next few weeks is where I'm keeping an eye on Florida State when it comes to effort. Are there other little things that you, when you're watching, film of Florida State that would set off all kinds of alarm bells for you of like, oh, Norvell's lost these guys, things that people should be watching for in the next month?
I'll be quite honest with you. This weekend, when I was watching a video of Florida State walk off the bus, I knew they were cooked. I knew they were done, but it was just something about the body language of when they even just got off the bus. I mean, nobody looked motivated. They didn't look like they were getting ready to go play a football game. They looked like they were about to go on a field trip that they didn't want to be on. I mean, these guys just looked completely like, and I say this nicely and respectfully, but these guys look lifeless. And I'm sure whether it be walking off the bus, if you're in the locker room before the game, you watch pregame warmups, I'm sure you see the same thing because that's what you see when they play. I mean, they don't even play with a sense of urgency of like, we're really bad, we need to be better. Like they don't even, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. If you have seen any urgency, like when DJU struggles, I've seen quarterbacks struggle and then have such a determination to get better that even they start playing worse. They start turning the ball over more because they're forcing plays, kind of like I talked about earlier. But at least they're trying. You know what I mean? Like, it looks like these guys are just out there just literally just because. Like, just Bill used to say it all the time. Guys just going out there collecting a sweat, just going out there working up a sweat, not doing anything. So to me, it starts with even that. And I couldn't really tell you what about it made it seem so obvious to me. But like I said, dude, just watching them get off the bus, these guys stand no chance. I already had Memphis picked to win, but even that. And I think that, again, that translates to the way that they play. And I don't think that we're going to see a change in that, between now and next week or the rest of the season.
Damien, I feel like I'm collecting a sweat. I'm coming to you from the ninth floor of the New York Times in Midtown Manhattan. Currently, I'm up here for some work.
You got some AC or what?
We got no AC in here. I think
you got a cold drink.
No, we got nothing.
You got nothing.
So you might not see my traditional background. It's going to be interesting. But you know who else was sweating this week, Damien? The Georgia Bulldogs.
Ooh, man, they had
knocked off of their number one ranking after going to Kentucky. A team that got worked by South Carolina last week, and they dropped to number 2, lose the number 1 spot to Texas. We've seen Georgia kind of do this before. Mizzou a couple years ago was one that stood out. Kentucky kind of has given Georgia some problems in the past. One of the things that always really impressed me about the Alabama program, throughout Saban's tenure, is they seem to almost never do this. Like the Citadel is the only one that stands out. But when they had these sleepy games in Starkville, in early November, 2 weeks out from the Iron Bowl, it's still beat down city. And Georgia, when they click, they still really click. But we've seen them kind of do this. I think when you look at games like this, from me watching, I always warn people. This is why the transitive property does not work in college football, because they're teams of 18 to 22-year-olds, and they're not static values. They don't play the same every single week. The South Carolina team that beat this Kentucky team by 25 points was not necessarily the same team that showed up against LSU, and obviously this Kentucky team was much better. But, Damien, when you see a team like Georgia play the way that they did, what is the biggest reason that games like this happen? Georgia's obviously better than this, but why do you see a team that we've seen be so unbelievable like Georgia already this season look so mortal?
I'm gonna step outside of the box for a second, and I'm just gonna give my own. This is Damien right here. This is Damien. It's Damien talking right now. I think Georgia's problem is a lack of leadership, a lack of accountability, and a lack of professionalism, just to be point blank and honest with you. And the reason why I say that is because look at all these off the field issues that Georgia's dealing with week in and week out.
Couple days before the game. It's bad.
If you count how many guys, which I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but if we knew the number and we talked about how many off the field incidents there have been just this offseason and going into this season alone, it's an absolutely absurd amount. So to me, you've got all these off the field issues. You've got a team full of really, really talented guys. And then you've got you've got games where you show up and you play extremely well. And then you've got games where you just come out and look like a shell of who you really are. And to me, all of that when you combine all of that, it just shows a lack of leadership. One, why is Carson Beck not grabbing his team, sitting down, having player-only meetings and saying, what the hell is going on? Why are we having guys getting arrested left and right, doing stuff that is putting lives in jeopardy, yours and others? Why do we have guys that are sitting here misrepresenting what the G on our chest means? What's going on? At the same time, where's Carson Beck grabbing his guys against Kentucky and being like, what are we doing? This is not a competitive team to us. You know what I mean? This is not a team that should be playing anywhere on the field with us. Hell, that's how we were. And we didn't have guys that were out here having all these crazy issues, right? We didn't have a ton of guys with all these off the field problems. We definitely had some. Every program has some. We didn't have a ton. But whenever we did, you know what we did? We called players only meetings, and the leaders, the Reuben Fosters, the Minka Fitzpatricks, the Jalen Hurts, the Tuas, they addressed that stuff right then and there. And they're like, nah, we only about business here. We only about winning football games. And then the same breath, the same regard, whenever we were in close games, our leaders would grab us on the sideline and be like, nah, we got to tighten up because this ain't what we're going to do. So a lot of the blowouts that we had, like against some of the Mississippi States and some of the Arkansas, even some of the LSU games, they were close until, beginning midway through the fourth quarter. And then we just blew the doors off at the end because we outlasted them, because we had that leadership to bring us in and be like, hey, guys, all right, we done pissed away 2.5, 3 quarters here. It's time now. It's the fourth quarter. This is what we train for. This is what we about. And then we went out and we just blew the doors off. Georgia didn't do that. You know what I mean? They lost a squeaker, 13-12. So to me, I know I'm ranting, I'm preaching. For those of y'all out there listening, I appreciate y'all listening to me. But it's just a lack of leadership. It's a lack of accountability. And again, it falls down to you've got these guys that are so talented, these guys that are put on a pedestal and feel like they're invincible. So they feel like they can go out and do all this dumb stuff off the field. Then they feel like they can go out and just show up and win games because they wear the G on their chest and they don't have to compete. Like, you're Georgia. Do you not think that every week you're going to get team's best game? Yeah. You don't think Kentucky's going to give you their absolute best game? At Alabama, we knew, I don't care if it's Citadel, I don't care if it's LSU, we're going to get their best punch. You know what I mean? So to me, it's just a lot of lack of leadership.
Mm-hmm. On the bright side for Kentucky, they don't get the job done there. Brock Vandagriff looked much, much better. I liked what I saw from him, and he was a disaster against South Carolina.
I went from not liking him to liking him a lot more.
I kind of liked what I saw, and I will say the punting in plus territory there with the trailing in the final minutes, that's a tough look for Mark Stoops. You gotta that might be a little conservative for
that was questionable. Taste. I was really surprised by that. Like, as somebody who was recruited by Stoops, and I've had a relationship with Stoops, I was surprised we kept a relationship after I ultimately didn't go to Kentucky. But like he's got that fiery, like that mentality, that spirit. Like, guys love to play for him. Like, I know guys that played at Kentucky, and just even watching his style of coaching, like I've seen him after big wins, he's crowd surfing his players, he's got that type of energy. So with the game on the line against the number one team in the country, and you're at home and you've got a chance to, I'm going to ask you this. If Kentucky wins that game last night, that's their biggest win since.
We were actually talking about this with some people last night. Like, Kentucky and Mark Stoops, like, he gets the job done almost every single year, but they never have these like landmark wins. I think it would clearly be the biggest win for him.
I think it would be the biggest one since LSU and back in like 2007. I think when LSU might have been the number one team in the country.
Could be. I think my question would be, I think it would be interesting to see. Because to me, when I saw that play, that felt like the defensive coach bubbling up in Mark Stoops and saying, we're going to get a stop. We're going to put on our defense here.
Man, forget that.
I would be very curious to know, like, if defensive coaches or head coaches with a defensive background are, like, inherently more conservative than offensive coaches. Because I feel like they are. I need to do some homework on this.
Naturally, you would think so. So. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen him just go for it, man.
I think you got to in a situation like that. Elsewhere, LSU goes to Columbia, another great atmosphere. I try to tell people this. Outside of the like elite places in college football, South Carolina might be the best of like that like second tier, that like 1A.
Well, Nick Saban said Williams-Brice is not an easy place to play.
It is not. It is not, and they were hopping. And I gotta say, South Carolina doesn't get the job done here. They lose. LSU wins 36-33. Chris picked LSU. Damien, we had it right. We had SC covering here. LSU moves up one spot to number 14 in Chris's Athletic 134. But I came away from this kind of encouraged about South Carolina, the personnel.
Definitely.
Lenore Sellers was kind of shaky making some plays, but you got a big run from Rocket Sanders. The defensive line, I think, is really going to continue to improve. Defensively, South Carolina just might have a really good defense, and LSU, you got to feel pretty good about where you're at.
I was expecting LSU with their star tackles. I was expecting them to hold up a lot better against this rush, and it wasn't just Dylan Stewart either. I mean, it was a lot of guys making plays in the backfield, and making Garrett Nussmeier's night. Like, it made it a long day for Nussmeier. Like, it was a long day for him. So I definitely expected LSU to stand up to that rush a little bit more.
Yeah, but I think ultimately LSU gets it done. The game got a little bit more offensive minded in the second half. 15 explosive plays for LSU in that game. 9 passes of 15 yards longer, 6 rushes of 10 yards longer. 5 of those passes, by the way, 20 yards or longer. But for South Carolina, 13 penalties, 123 yards. They get a pick 6 called back because of the penalty on Kyle Kennard, although a little iffy on the call. The 3 turnovers, I mean, in a game that tight, and South Carolina, like, they're playing against a more talented roster at LSU.
Yeah.
Your margin of error is pretty small. I think Shane Beamer pretty much explicitly said it. If you commit 13 penalties, you're not going to win a game in the SEC.
Yeah, no, that right there alone, that stat, you won't win. You'd be lucky to win 1 out of 10 games, commit that many penalties.
And I got to say, Shane Beamer, we were talking about playing conservative. Shane Beamer doesn't have a history of being a coordinator. He's more of like a program builder sort of type of guy. Yeah. But they had 20 seconds left. They ran 1 play, settled for a 49-yard kick for a kicker.
That was way too conservative.
I don't know how many times we've seen, North Carolina loses or Minnesota loses a game earlier this year. The same thing. I don't understand how much more college coaches need to see of kickers to anything outside of 40 yards. If you're settling for it, you are playing with fire.
The college kicking game isn't the best. I'll be honest. It's not. And, there were some other things that I felt like contributed to that too, right? Like, I thought the play calling was conservative, but like there's one play that comes to mind. You're going to have to remind me of the backup quarterback for South Carolina's name.
Robbie Ashford, the Auburn transfer.
Robbie Ashford. There was he had a guy wide open in the flat. It might have been his running back for an easy 4-yard completion. And I mean, he just absolutely whiffed the throw. I mean, just horrible throw, sails it out of bounds. Those extra 3 or 4 yards right there are the difference between the ball hitting the crossbar or going in and curving behind the crossbar. So it's like, even like that, I felt like that was just such a poorly handled situation at the end of the game for South Carolina to be in such a position to upset LSU at home. Like, they had them on the ropes. They had them all game. I feel like if they took them to overtime, like, obviously you got a good chance. Like, you have a really, really good chance. But to handle the end of the game like that, I mean, the result what it was because of that.
I think it's Damien. You play golf
occasionally?
Okay,
occasionally. For me, I'm a flex on this podcast now.
Okay,
I have golfed at Augusta National, so I might not be a good golfer, but I have golfed at Augusta National.
We're gonna do a 40-minute pod. I'm just saying. It's gonna be hard for me to continue this podcast, having learned this now. Dude.
I'm just saying, man. It happens. Wild. You never know. You never know where life will take you. You never know. You
truly don't. I'm shook right now. Anyway, my thought is, if you're a kicker, right, and you're going for a game winner and it's a 49-yarder, that to me is like if you're playing from the tips and you got to hit a ball 265 to clear water, it's more likely you're going to get an undisciplined swing. Versus if you got to clear 200 to clear the water, you're not really even thinking about it off the tee. Right. You're just making your normal swing. If you get him within 40 yards and he's just kicking, there's a 49-yarder, especially a guy as inexperienced as Alex Herrera was. That seems to me, again, I think there's a lot of these coaches that once you get inside that special green line that you told the TV people, this is where we want to be, then it's like, well, now I'm leaving it up to the players. And if the players fail, like, hey, we did our job there. I think we see it every week. It's different in the NFL than it is in college. The kicking is a lot less reliable.
Yeah, it's a lot different in the NFL. But you said it perfectly, though, Ubben. Everybody has a job to do. There's only so much a coach can do. Granted, we're sitting here talking about how conservative some of the play calling was and how they handled that drive. But at the end of the day, that was a makeable kick. Yeah, I know that the college kicking game is a little bit different than the NFL, but that was a makeable kick. I've seen guys across the country make 50-yarders, 53-yarders.
I'm sure he's made it plenty in practice before.
Yeah, but honestly, I knew he was going to miss it. I did, and it was unfortunate because whenever they iced him the first time and they got his little practice kick in, he missed the first one. I was like, there's no way you're not gonna miss one and then just be like, oh, okay, let me fix it and make the next one. No, you miss it, then your heart starts beating even faster. You start sweating even more, kind of like Ubben's doing at the New York Times right now. Like,
we're struggling.
The sweat is real, and it sucks because again, everybody has a job to do, and for kickers, you have one job to do. Like I swear, and I've loved all the kickers that I've ever played with. So this is not a knock on the specialists because specialists, they're called specialists for a reason, but whenever you are a specialist and whenever there's a word special by your name, you got to be good at what you do. Like, you just have to. This is a production-based business. If you're out there to make kicks, you got to make kicks. You're not a quarterback. You're not out there worried about reading the defense, throwing to this guy. Is this guy blitzing? What's my hot? Where's my protection? What's my back doing? You just got to line it up and kick, my guy. So it's just, like you said, the coach could have handled it a little bit better. At the end of the day, it was a makeable kick. He just didn't get the job done.
Yeah.
So sad.
Before we keep it moving, our sweet Vandy, they were undefeated. They give it up to Georgia State. This is not on our sweet Diego. Diego Pavia led them down the field, scored a go-ahead touchdown in the final minutes, but the defense gave it up late. Georgia State wins 36-32. Vandy, I was rooting for you. I wanted to see if maybe Vandy could sniff a bowl game, maybe make some noise in the SEC. Not encouraging if you lose to Georgia State. Although, Del McGee, I like that hire a lot, bringing him over from Georgia. Georgia State, I mean, they're right in the heart of Atlanta. I think Georgia State is one of those programs that when you look at like G5 teams who I'd buy stock in, Georgia State would be one of those.
Definitely. Man, shout out to Ted Hurst. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I know you talked about that touchdown at the end of the game, but man, that is like ultimate ice in your veins moment right there. Like that's something that you dream about right there. Like, games on the line. You got, well, how much were they up by? 3, 4?
3, I think. Yeah.
There, you're up by 3. It's third down, and that I imagine that was one of those plays. As soon as they called it in the huddle, he knew he was getting the ball. Like, it was his quarterback probably told him, "Listen, I'm gonna give you a shot. I'm gonna throw it up because it's either your ball or it goes out of bounds, and we'll live to fight another day." But I'm throwing it up to you. He's like, all right, I got it. And you always go, you're like, all right, I got it. Ball's coming to me, and you want to do everything right. And like 9 times out of 10, it doesn't go perfectly how you want. But man, what a play. It was a great thrown ball. And like, just to make that play, and that was a bang, bang play at the end of the game to seal it for Georgia State. Dude, that was cool to see. I love seeing guys make plays like that, man. I love seeing guys make plays.
Friday night, Kansas loses to UNLV, their second loss this season. They already lost to Illinois. 23-20. UNLV, by the way, jumps from 50 to 25 in the Athletic 134.
Okay.
They're number 25 in the AP poll as well.
Okay.
This is a two-pronged thing. This is a two-pronged thing to me because I really thought, one, Kansas is going to be one of the most fun teams in the country this year. I like what we've seen from Jeff Grimes throughout his career as an OC. He was the guy who helped Zach Wilson get drafted number 2 overall. That BYU team in 2020, they were slinging it. They're really fun. Goes to Baylor.
Airing it out.
Yeah, goes to Baylor, helps them, win a Big 12 title. It didn't go great after that, but he comes to Kansas to replace Andy Kotelnicki. But he's now, I think, 2-15 in his last 17 games against FBS opponents. The big thing here, though, is I can't really explain what's going on with Jalen Daniels. He's been a turnover machine.
Yeah, I don't think he sees the field very well. Honestly,
that's probably fair. I wonder how much of that is missing as much time as he has the last couple of years. And then, but from KU's perspective, they don't have Jason Bean coming off of the bench, or somebody they can look to. But Jalen's, he was probably the most electrifying player in the Big 12 coming into last season. The injuries limited him, but it's been tough to watch him struggle because he is so fun. And I think they've underutilized Devin Neal as well, a guy that has a lot of talent. I got to say, Chris plays with KU and CFB 25 online, and he's nasty with Devin Neal. But they're really fun, and it's just it's
I'm
not working.
Test them out.
The loss of Andy Kotelnicki has been huge. But on the flip side, I wrote about this for Bubble Watch. These games have a new meaning, and we saw UNLV get it done. We saw Toledo get it done. Obviously, we saw Memphis. Northern Illinois as well last week. In a lot of weeks, these are just sort of nice stories or like a cool moment. These are resume points in a playoff resume.
Now they got implications. Yeah,
that G5 race is really, really interesting because there's so many teams that have legit great wins hanging on their wall, and it's going to be interesting to see this sort out. And can you get through your conference season, with one loss, albeit undefeated? I don't know that I see any of these teams that are hanging up there. Liberty's been very shaky through a couple weeks, but I don't know that you're going to see a Northern Illinois or even a Memphis or even a Toledo get through undefeated. But they've got these wins, and having the committee sort through the resumes is going to be very, very interesting.
I think that's the only good thing about the 12-team playoff, honestly, is it just stresses the importance of every single game. Right. And that's just the mentality that I had. It was forced upon me, obviously, by coaching and, the programs that I was a part of. But every single game is important. And yes, there's a goal at the end of the year that you want to get to, but you're only going to get to that goal if you take care of business every single week. You go 1-0 every single week. And because of that, if you want to get to where you want to go, that makes every week incredibly important, right? It was a little bit different for us because, like I said, we were always expected to be the number one team in the country. So there was always a target on our back. But and because of that, like I said earlier, we knew we were going to get everybody's best game. And that's why we went into every game, like every single rep, every single play, every single turnover, every single yard, it all matters. So now you see that more across the grander stage. The grander stage of college football to where every game is important to every team. Now people are worried about, okay, I'm going to leave my starters in and run up the score because, we want style points, right? Or we're going to keep our foot on the gas because we need to do this because we want to get to the 12-team playoff. We want to blah, 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 blah. Like, it's all about getting to the 12-team playoff. So it's just stressing the importance of every single game. So I guess if I could say there's one good thing about the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams, it's like the conversation that we're having right now about how big these games are for like a UNLV or an NIU, or some of these teams who obviously without an expansion, they would never even sniff the conversation. But now they have something to play for every single week.
UNLV has been interesting. Barry Odom's done a great job there. Bobby Petrino comes in there, walks out after like 2 weeks. They go get Brennan Marion. He brings the go-go offense to UNLV.
Yep.
They lose Jaden Mayava, who goes to USC to be a backup basically this year. But they get Matt Sluka from Holy Cross, a really good player from the FCS level. I was curious to get your take on the go-go offense. It has these pretty insane formations. It's basically a lot of triple option concepts, but with vertical passing that Brennan Marion kind of made up. But you'll see a guy in the gun with like two backs next to him. It's really interesting. What did you make of kind of getting to see the go-go on the national stage with a Friday night game, Damien?
Yeah, well, it looks like a pain to deal with for everybody involved, honestly. For defenses to learn it, for everybody, really. But I think that it just opens up the variety of having so many options at your disposal, so many different ways to attack defenses. And you get certain guys in mismatched situations, you get guys in all these different opportunities. You just get creative and you let guys really just showcase their ability, right? Because what do guys want to do? Guys want to go out there and make plays. Yes, obviously, there is structure to these plays and there's assignments, there's rules and everything, but everybody wants to be put in a position to be successful. The go-go offense to me looked like, if I was a guy playing in that offense, like, man, like this is a lot of eye candy for defense. There's a lot of things for defense to worry about. Like, if they got to play for me, I can get lost in the shuffle over here, and everybody's focused over here. There's so much distraction. There's so many eyes, different places. So after the pain of trying to learn it and trying to understand all the concepts and how all the parts work together and why everything is set up the way that it is, as a player, I could definitely see that as an offense that could really just get me in some really opportune spots to showcase my talent. And just let me go out there, be free. Let me just go out there and do what I do. Once I get the ball in hands, let me do what I do.
Friday night, Kansas State, ranked versus ranked matchup for now. Kansas State wins 31-7. They beat Brent Brennan's Arizona team, first-year coach down there, Chris Kleiman. We saw a lot of interesting stuff. I think for me, I wasn't really sure what to make of this Kansas State team because you're leaning into Avery Johnson. We saw him do some special things. I think he still has to grow as a passer.
Absolutely.
But the backs, I love DJ Giddens, love Dylan Edwards. He returned a punt for a touchdown.
That thing.
They really were. I'm curious though, Damien, when you have a runner at like Avery Johnson, a quarterback, he had his first 100-yard game, 110 rushing yards. You obviously you gain that extra blocker. You flip the numbers in the running game, but as a back, what can that do for a running game? Having not only a quarterback runner, but have a quarterback runner that's that explosive, like Avery Johnson.
It opens up a ton of holes for you. I can tell you that honestly. Playing with Jalen Hurts was probably one of the most influential parts of my career at Alabama was because he was such a dynamic runner, and there were so many eyes on him. Because whenever you think about guy, like the quarterback is a guy that touches the ball on every play, right? Mm-hmm. He's got the ability to throw. He's got the ability to run. So even whenever you're looking at a quarterback as a defender who's dual threat, who can use his legs so well, you've got to respect both options, right? So as a running back, you've got to worry about, okay, am I going to run the ball? Is Jalen going to run the ball? Is Jalen going to throw the ball? So that makes guys freeze. It makes their brains freeze for a second. Then once the ball turns over, we got guys going up the block. Then we're meshing between, running back, quarterback exchange. Guys don't know where the ball is going. And then next thing you know, dude, I'm running down the seams for a 75-yard touchdown. And that a lot of design called runs where there's no RPO attached to it or no zone read concept attached to it. Jalen's just handing the ball off. And then as soon as he hands it off, he just takes one step to hold a defender. Well, that opens up a humongous cutback lane because, if I've got a less mobile quarterback, as soon as he sees that mesh, he's keying on me he's closing off the edge like that. And he's trying to get to me as fast as possible. Jalen takes that step, or Avery takes that step, and then it opens up that cutback
don't want to get
lane.
beat to the edge. Yeah.
Exactly. And then that just freezes the defensive end for a second. And the next thing you know, I'm already by him. The linebackers are covered up. And then it's next thing I'm one-on-one with the safety. I put a little bing on him, and I'm gone to the crib. So that's huge to a running back because it just gives the defense so much more to worry about. And honestly, defenses are more worried about a mobile quarterback than they are a running back. Because honestly, you're not expecting them to run. And then once they take off, then you're like, oh, shoot, the quarterback still got the ball. Yeah. And those are usually bigger plays as opposed to, the running back 3 yard, 4 yards, 6 yards, 1 yard, 2 yards. Like, they'll give that up all day. That's a bend but don't break mentality. Like, okay, we're going to give that up, but we're not going to give up, an explosive 60-yard touchdown run to Arch Manning. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it definitely opens up a lot for the backs.
I liked K-State to win this game and cover because of their offensive line. I did not think they would lay the smack down like this. Arizona, they got some issues offensively because
they got to figure a lot out.
Noah Fafita sticks around. Tetairoa McMillan sticks around. They're making some plays, but every time it feels like they're not throwing the ball to T-Mac. It's like this is trouble. Arizona should feel a little nervous coming out of it. And K-State should feel, I think, pretty good. Missouri beats Boston College 27-21. A little nervy for the Tigers.
A little bit. I told you guys where Missouri hadn't given up any points all year. Once they finally gave up a touchdown or gave up some points, they might give up a little bit more. Granted, it was on a couple busted plays. And I will say this, Missouri's defense, other than those busted plays, they played lights out. I mean, they gave up 91 yards in the second half. 1.9 yards per carry, -3 rushing yards. I mean, they played lights out for sure. Yeah. I think they were motivated by the fact that they were still giving up points, but that was a big game within the game that I was interested to see how that was going to play out.
They locked down in the second half. The Castellanos touchdown pass on the broken play, that was pretty awesome. If fluky or not, you could see on the replay, like once Missouri had a bunch of guys in the box on that play. The tight ends leaked out. Once that ball hit the ground, then all assignments were lost. But I don't think the tight ends saw that. I don't think the tight ends saw it. They ran and they're looking back like, why did no defenders come with me? And Castellanos picks it up. I remember watching. Castellanos is a really smart player. I was like, he's gonna throw it away, and then he's like, oh, how about instead of throwing it away, I just throw it to my tight end 20 yards downfield where nobody's near it.
Boys, we used to call that calm under fire. CUF. Yeah. Busted play. Listen, pick the ball up and make something shake. Don't just give up. Listen, don't make a bad play worse. But shoot, sometimes things break down. The play breaks down. You can't don't just lay it down. Shoot, be calm and make a play. And surely enough, that's what they did.
Luther Burden had a pretty eventful day. 6 catches, 117 yards, touchdown. He did
a mouthpiece thrown.
Tear off an opponent's mouth guard and throw it. He got another sports like that. After the game, he said he had to stop doing some dumb stuff like that. I gotta say, I thought it was mostly hilarious. I think on sportsman, when they come in a big spot, like if you extend a drive or if it's in a huge spot, I think they can really hurt your team. This one seemed
for sure
a little more harmless. But Damien, what are you doing if a guy takes your mouth guard off of your helmet and throws it?
Honestly, I don't know what I would do in that situation because I would love to sit here and give the politically correct answer and be like, I would have handled it the right way. I wouldn't have gotten an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. I wouldn't have got yelled at by Coach Saban. But at the same time, I can't say I would have let nothing like that slide. But what I can say for the kids that are out there listening, it's always the second guy that gets caught. So either be first or get caught. Life lessons here. But yeah, no, it's like you said, it was a very meaningless penalty in this game and in this moment. But as a competitor and as a leader of a team who is in a really, really, really good spot, yes, it was meaningless this time, but take those comments that you made about, yes, I've got to stop doing unfortunate things. I've got to stop doing dumb things to hurt our team. You got to take that moving forward, because you're going to be in bigger games, more emotional games where tempers are going to be flaring even more. And you got to be able to control that. So don't fall back on the, oh, well, I did it one time and I got away with it because, it didn't really cost my team that much. Like, no, just correct it. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. But I've seen much worse with these celebrations and all of this and all of this. Like, I've seen much worse. So it wasn't it wasn't that bad. But again, just learn from it. You know what I mean? Because he's a great player too.
Yeah, he's really fun to watch. He's really tough to tackle with the ball in his hands in the second level. Also, the AP poll drops Missouri to number 7 after the win. Life's too short to care about the AP poll, guys.
It is. Don't read into it too much.
When they were factoring in the polls into the BCS, it mattered a lot more. But now, literally, I always have to remind fans of this. The only opinions in all of college football that actually matter, other than mine and yours, Damien, are the 13 people in the committee room. Like, it's so it's like, I get people get mad about the preseason polls or the conferences and all this stuff. It's like, guys,
truly rankings don't really matter anymore. If I'm being quite honest, they don't matter. The CFP's
the only ones that do.
It doesn't hold. It holds no weight. It holds no precedent, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a selection committee of 13 people who say, okay, these are the top 12 teams in the country. Like, obviously, you've got your automatic qualifiers.
Yeah.
These are the top 12 teams in the country, in our opinion. Here's going to be in the playoffs. Rank them 1 through this based on how good we think they are. Like, that's essentially what this is becoming, what it has become. There's a way that they formatted it to where it doesn't seem as much like it's that's what it is, but ultimately that's what it is. They're just picking the best 12 teams. They found a way to implement a system of, okay, well, these 4 teams have to be the best, obviously, if they win their conference. But again, once we're talking about like the AP polls and rankings, like, none of that really matters.
It's pretty funny that I did the mock selection a couple years ago, and actually Chris was at the first 12-team mock selection on Friday in Grapevine. The way you should, if you're listening to this, you haven't listened to or written about read, I wrote about kind of 12 things that the committee, I don't remember what the headline was, but basically the process for how it's done is incredibly different than the polls, the AP poll and the coaches poll. So
exactly.
It's very complicated. It's very convoluted. It's probably more complicated than it needs to be, but they're going to get their hotel points. They're going to get their hotel breakfast.
Adding 8 more teams definitely complicated it more. Should have stayed at 4.
It's going to be interesting. Okay, Damien, Alabama goes to Camp Randall.
Let's talk about them. Let's talk about the
Against my better judgment, I thought Wisconsin could keep this thing
out
close.
Of your mind.
They did not. Damien, it just felt like they weighed on whiskey the whole day long. Obviously, Tyler Van Dyke, the knee injury looked really, really really
Yeah.
I hope we see him again this season. I haven't seen.
Specifics?
Luke Fickle's pretty tight-lipped on injuries, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But our friends at the Solid Verbal call it a crock-potting. It's nothing big, no huge plays, but you're just in the heat all day, and then after a while, your structural integrity just breaks down entirely. When you got Alabama has been known to crock-pot a team or two in their day. They're the kings of it. Could you sense when a team was going to break?
Mm-hmm. It was always around the middle of the third quarter going into the fourth quarter. Some teams would last into, the early parts of the fourth quarter, but, kind of like I alluded to earlier, whenever we played the Arkansas or the Mississippi States or even the LSUs, and they were close-knit throughout the game, we always knew that there was going to be a point where they were going to break. We always knew it. And there would be signs throughout the game. Once guys started putting their hands on their hips and we're like, oh, well, we just getting started. You getting tired? Are you looking to the sideline? You're getting a little tired, aren't you? Oh, you're in trouble because I am just getting started. Like, I got a whole nother quarter and a half. You know what I mean? So I could tell that when I was watching this game. There were definitely times where, again, it was a little back and forth. Alabama looked in control, but not really in control. Yeah. But I could feel it building and building. Yeah. And it's almost kind of like a python, right? Like sometimes it's fast, right? Like you just open the floodgates and you just boom, 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 boom. You're just running them off the field. But this felt kind of like a python. Like it slowly, like Jalen Milroe slowly, like just poured it on. Rushing touchdown, passing touchdown. It wasn't even like the most explosive. I mean, he had a couple explosive plays. The touchdown to Ryan Williams, that was a big play. Jan Miller had a big run. Other than that, it seemed like they were just driving, just wearing them down, laying on them. And then eventually it just started, the stream started to pick up a little bit. And, you know, once it gets to that point, I mean, I know people say that the tide rolls and a lot of people get tired of hearing that, but it does. Like once you get swept away by the tide, it ain't no coming back.
Jalen Milroe, 3 straight games with 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, buddy.
The only quarterbacks who've done that since 2008. Tim Tebow. I don't know if you guys have heard of him.
Timmy T.
Johnny Manziel. I don't know if you guys have heard of him.
Hell Manziel.
Jordan Lynch and Colin Kaepernick, the only guys to do that since 2008. Pretty elite
company, man.
Ryan Williams, you know, I feel like I'm contractually obligated, or else they're going to bust in here and tell me that I have to remind people that he is 17. But Damien, what is that dynamic like? Bama, there's so much 5-star talent everywhere. But when a kid comes into a place like that, and he's been on campus, I think he got there in January, I believe. Double check me if I'm wrong. He's been there 8 months, and it's clear he's special. He seems clear that he's their best target. What is that dynamic like? Walking into a program with as much talent, and you've been there so short, and it's like, oh, this guy's just different.
Yeah, so I only know that from the outside looking in because my freshman year was like a redshirt year. Like I was like a core special teamer, like, you know, utility guy. Once Derek got his 200 yards, they just, you know, Damien here and there. But my roommate was exactly what this kid Ryan Williams is, just on the defensive side of the ball, and he goes by the name of Minkah Fitzpatrick. And when I tell you, Minkah stepped onto campus, and from the very first time he stepped on that football field, every single 5-star on that team, every single coach, Nick Saban, everybody was like, this kid is special. Like he is something that out of all the 5 stars that we have, out of all the talent that we get, no, he is the 1% of the 1%. And that's what I see when I see this kid, Ryan Williams. I mean, he's got to have, the most plus 30-yard touchdown receptions of the season so far. And he's 17 years old. Yeah. So when you look at a kid like that, all you see is like the value that he adds to your program and like how special he can be. You know, Coach Saban said that Ryan Williams reminds him of Amari Cooper. Yeah. This kid is 17 years old. Listen to this, people. This kid is 17 years old and being compared to Amari Cooper, the best route runner that I've ever seen. One of the most explosive wide receivers in Alabama history. In the NFL over a certain period of time. One of the most dominant receivers in the NFL. Like, that's how good this 17-year-old kid is. So all I can tell you is just get your popcorn and just watch him. See what this kid does over the next 3 years. People have started to forget, like, Alabama is one of the wide receiver U's. You know what I mean? Ohio State has had, you know, Marvin Harrison Jr., and now they've got Jeremiah Smith, and they've had Jackson. I'm not even going to try to say his last name because I would butcher
Smith and
Jigba, yes. You know, Chris Olave. Like, they've had all these receivers in the past few years, but, like, Bama still got them guys, and Ryan Williams is definitely the young guy, because Alabama, it's weird. Alabama always, even though you bring in all these 5 stars, like, a lot of these 5-star guys, like myself, you know, they take a hit their freshman year. Like, they sit behind, you know, their respective elders. And because there's a 5-star guy ahead of you that's been playing for 2 or 3 years. But there's always one guy, like another guy that was in my rookie class that just, as soon as he stepped on the field and got it, was Calvin Ridley. You know what I mean? And then you see what he's been able to do. You see the deal that he just signed in the NFL. I mean, Ryan Williams, he's just a part of that pedigree of like special day one guys that immediately have an impact. And I mean, God protect him and God keep him safe, but he will have a very, very, very successful career.
I do have a bone to pick though, Damien. Jeremy Bernard, the Washington transfer, said we were ready. He said, quote, "We were ready to shut that weak ass jump song down." Sir, Jump around is awesome. Let's not.
It is. That's like it is. And that was one thing. That was one thing. Like whenever I played and I went to other stadiums, I respected the traditions. Like we're beating the hell out of you, but these are good. This is a good tradition. But to trash the jump around, I was like, man, come on, that's a good one. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's a good one. I don't know. I might have let that one.
I don't hear anybody from LSU trashing Sandstorm. Come on now. We did get a voicemail about Alabama. Let's hear what we got.
Yeah.
Hey y'all, this is Riley calling in. Watching Bama about to walk off from Camp Randall with a win here. The one thing that's really stuck with me from this game, though, was a comment by Joel Klatt on the commentary. He made a comment to Nick Saban with the decision last season to bench Jalen Milroe, which he made a lot of conjecture and speculation and saying that Nick Saban did that as something as kind of a sound off to the Alabama fans of saying, this is what else we have at quarterback. How do you like that? Because they were demanding it, and just sounded like a lot of speculation, insult to Nick Saban's character for someone who didn't really act that way with his fans. Damien, as a former player, I don't know what you would have to say to Nick Saban's character with that. And then also as sports journalist, just what that kind of comment really comes off as, because that didn't sound good to me. But glad to listen to y'all's show. Love what y'all do. Looking forward to listening this week too. Roll Tide.
Well, roll Tide to that.
Yeah, before we get into it, so last year against USF, Jalen Milroe was looking a little shaky the first couple games, and then they handed the keys over to Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson going into that game. It was very ugly. It was also rain delay. It was like soaking wet. It was a very weird game. It actually seemed like the kind of game where Milroe and his legs might actually have thrived. I think what Klatt is saying is more in hindsight. Listen, that was a weird decision. It was a weird managing of the quarterbacks. I don't know exactly what went into that decision. I don't think that they would say it as explicitly as Klatt said it. But I think what Klatt is saying is, in retrospect, I didn't hear a word about let's bench Jalen Milroe after that game. You saw what you had. So I don't know that they were explicitly looking for, a USF game where they felt like they could win and play poorly at quarterback. I think that was a weird game for 100 different reasons. But I do think it offered some clarity for the rest of the season, and that even when Milroe had some less than great moments as they were kind of figuring things out, and then they hit their high gear late in the season, I think it eliminated all of the discussion about him. What did you make of our caller, Damien?
Yeah, so as far as Joe Klatt, again, I'm with you, David. I'm not necessarily sure how he meant what he was saying. I'm not sure if he was just kind of looking at it subjectively, like, oh, well, maybe this could have been what it is. So I don't really want to dive much into what he said because, again, I would have to have a conversation with him to know exactly what he meant. What I can say is, to answer our caller's question, that's not in Nick Saban's pedigree whatsoever. Like, that's not his character. That's not how he coached. That's not the type of, like, I think that I can say this, and David, you probably back me. That's not the actions of somebody who wins national championship after national championship. Like, hey, let's go out and play like trash and put a guy in there that makes us look bad just to prove a point to the fans. What? Yeah. Like, Nick Saban is I don't think anybody cares what people think less than Nick Saban, honestly. And if anything, Nick Saban used to get on people, fans especially, about being too entitled and having these expectations of us. Because why? Every game we went out there to win, and we went out and put our best 11 guys on the field on offense, defense, special teams that put us in the best situation to win week in, week out, whatever the circumstances were, whatever the result were, or whatever the result was. We went out there and played our best brand of football every single Saturday. So if there's any speculation that somebody like Nick Saban, like not even somebody like Nick Saban himself would put his team in a position to not be successful in order to prove a point to fans, just listen to me clearly, that would never happen. That would never happen, ever.
Yeah. Moving on, Damien, Oklahoma beats Tulane in Norman 34-19, sets up a pretty big showdown with game day in town with Tennessee coming next week. We all had Tulane in this game. I think, Oklahoma, Oregon, Notre Dame, those are the three that kind of stood out to me. It was a big week for did you play bad or are you bad? And I think that's where we got to figure it out the first month of the season is with Oregon. We're kind of like, we thought you were good. Are you okay? Yeah. Oklahoma, they didn't. I mean, it wasn't an incredibly impressive performance. They're not very
wowing
shaky.
Nobody, man. Yeah, they're not wowing anybody.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think Jackson Arnold has been okay. He's a 62 completion percentage, 484 yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 picks, 159 rushing yards. He's been okay. I think people want him to be great. Yeah. I think people want him to be great.
They don't want him to be great. They expect him to be great because this is Oklahoma. Like whenever you play certain positions, obviously quarterback, at certain programs, Oklahoma, you want to see greatness. They've seen Kyler Murray. They've seen Jalen Hurts. Hell, they've seen Caleb Williams there for a little bit. They expect to see greatness. They've seen Baker Mayfield, Heisman Trophy winner. They expect to see greatness out of that position. As fans, we look at Oklahoma as a team. Again, I'll bring this up. I'll beat this horse repetitively. We saw Oklahoma come into the SEC at the same time as Texas on the same level. Like, listen, it's us in Texas. We're at the same level as them. We're coming to take the SEC by storm. Okay, well, if that's who you are, then wow us against Tulane. Wow us. If Texas had played Tulane, they would have wowed us. Or maybe not have wowed us in a sense of...
I don't know. I think you might be right. Yeah, they might
maybe not wow in a sense of like, oh, wow, this is like something we didn't expect. But like, wow, Quinn Ewers played his tail off today against the team that he should have played against. Arch Manning got in there. He went out there and balled. Isaiah Bond, they went out there and balled. They ran the ball well. They didn't give up no points. Like, that's what we'd be saying, talking about. Instead of, oh, well, Quinn Ewers played okay. Texas, you know, they played okay. They played well enough to beat Tulane. Like, no, let's be real here. This isn't like a program that's like, oh, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, no, this is who you are. This is who you've shown you are in the past. This is who you say you're going to be in the future. Well, the results right now, the math ain't mathing to me, Oklahoma. the math ain't mathing to me. I need to see more.
With Oregon, I think we might have seen them snap out of it.
Yes, perfect example.
Oklahoma, I'm not so sure, although I worry because Oregon State might be just not very good, and Notre Dame
could be,
scored 66
but still,
against Purdue.
Even if they're not, though, whenever good teams are playing teams that aren't good, what you would expect to see is what you saw from Oregon and Oregon State, or Notre Dame and Purdue.
Yeah,
perfect case in point. But like I said, against Oklahoma Tulane, that's a good team versus a team with Tulane. They're okay. They're all right, but they're not that good. Like, truthfully, they're not that good.
And the final score is deceiving. This was a much closer game. I think Tulane had the ball, the chance to take the lead in the fourth quarter, if I recall. So, UCF and TCU, we're trying to sort out the Big 12, which continues to be insane.
It's a whole mishmash right now.
We had 2 undefeated teams here. UCF comes back from down 3 touchdowns to beat TCU. They outscored them 28-13 in the second half, 15-3 in the fourth. They ran the ball on 10 third downs. They got Penny Boone, RJ Harvey. Damien, what do you make of the Knights? Do not call them the Golden Knights. They'll yell at you. What do you make of the Knights coming back and doing it on the ground?
I don't like UCF anyways after they claimed that they won the national championship the year that we did. You know, I actually that was my only Twitter beef with another player from another team. I was arguing with the punter from it was either the punter or the long snapper from UCF back in the day, because he was like, dude, when you go undefeated and you know nobody beats you, like you're the champ. I'm like, what? And I was like, hey, send me a picture of you with the national championship trophy. Like just post one, because I have one. Here you go. But anyways, against my better judgment, UCF has got some, how can I say this on the podcast? Some cojones for running the ball 10 times on third down and converting 8 of them. Like, one, that is very, very bold. Like, that is coming from somebody who, you know, I played in that game in Buffalo where we only threw the ball twice. Like, that is not easy to do, to run the ball in critical situations like that. Like, it is not easy. So to have the confidence to be able to do that and then have the level of execution to be able to go out and do that, like, that's really, really impressive. Like, I can't think of a game in recent memory, maybe other than that game when I was in New England when we were playing Buffalo, of a team running the ball, that like just being that determined on we are running the football. Because I mean, I think if you look at running the ball 10 times on third down, regardless of what else you do in the game, that shows a commitment to the run game and a confidence in the run game. So that was something you don't see every day. But like I said, not only to have the confidence to do it, but to have the level of execution to be able to do it, like that was impressive.
And I do think, KJ Jefferson and Gus Malzahn, I really liked that marriage. I thought that made a lot of sense. Been not good through a couple games. In the second half, 9 of 11, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus the go-ahead score there late. Nice to see that sort of start to click. Damon, we got to hit a couple rivalry games before we get to our Heisman and Criesmans of the week. Utah wins 38-21. The Battle of Brothers win against Utah State. Isaac Wilson steps in there. I don't believe a word Utah says about any of Cam Rising's injuries.
No.
But we'll see. Isaac Wilson, the younger brother of Zach Wilson, they get a win there.
Yeah.
A little bit better offensively than they were against Baylor.
I thought, considering the circumstances, I thought they looked pretty good. And to me, watching that Utah game, I came out of it thinking Utah is still the favorite in the Big 12. Even right now, without Cam Rising, we're going to see how that plays out the rest of the year. But again, as of week 3 going into week 4, with Cam Rising being out, at first I was like, when we were talking about the Kansas State and Arizona game, like that was a huge chance for a Big 12 team to, have a chance to move their way up and, hope for something at the end of the year, depending on how the Cam Rising situation went on. But if Utah is able to still play the way that they did without him, I still see them as the Big 12 favorite right now.
The one thing I think works in their favor is you look around the Big 12 and you're like, there's not really like an offense that's just going to set you on fire. I mean, if you ask who the best offense was in the Big 12, I mean, you can make a case for a bunch of like we've talked about Arizona and Kansas on the show. I might have pointed to them preseason.
Kansas
it's definitely
bringing
not
out
them
the
so
speed
far.
option. Listen, I know they lost that game, but seeing Kansas bring the speed option back out, I love that.
Yeah, they got 2 speedy guys to do it too. So I don't know. I just at the end of the day, I think quarterback play can separate you so much that I still think it comes short. Pitt goes into the brawl, hosts West Virginia, gets a win. We got a voicemail for this game too. 38-34, the Panthers win.
This is Kyle from Buchanan, West Virginia. And I know calling right after a game is not the best thing, but I've been one of Neil Brown's biggest supporters through the ups and downs. But is it too late to start the hot seat watch along with Billy Napier to be Neil Brown? Because I really just don't think we're ever going to get out of this mediocrity without a new coach. And I've been one of the ones that defending from day one, but it just seems like it's the same thing every year.
So this is an interesting question. So the last 2 years, this has been an improved team, but this strikes me as when you lose to Penn State and you lose to Pitt, especially the manner in which you did. They led this game by double digits with like 6 minutes left.
Yeah.
It accentuates these losses and you lose sight of it. I think the hard thing with West Virginia and where the place in the program is right now is they're having to sort of adjust their expectations. This is not the Big East anymore. That's not the Big 12 that they came into with Texas and Oklahoma out, but it's still better than it was in the Big East. And I think when you get really used to, we're winning 9, 10, 11 games every year, I think the question that I don't think I even have a good answer to is what are fair expectations for West Virginia's program. Right. I think it's fair to feel like Neil Brown is falling short of them. But I think based on the trajectory that we've seen from them the last couple years, I get the frustration. I would still be a little more patient. He coached himself off the hot seat last year, so I'm not all the way in on trying to make a change there. Pat Narduzzi after the game though, not happy. Pat Narduzzi generally angry all the time anyway. And he famously was very frustrated with some of his guys leaving for Colorado over the offseason. But Pat Narduzzi had some thoughts after the win. Some of the calls we got, late hit out of bounds, they catch a ball with their hands to the face. I ain't never seen anything like it. We beat West Virginia in the backyard brawl, and we beat the officials too. I think this is it was not a conference game, so I don't think he can actually be fined by the conference. I'm not sure which conference is. I think it was I think it was Big 12 officials, or maybe it was ACC. I don't know.
They're going to find a way to find him. They're going to find a way.
I don't know that he's going to get fined for it. I don't think they can when it's not a conference game. Very funny, however. A big win for Pitt. Pitt, by the way, one of the more surprising 3-0 teams in the country right now. They brought in Cade Bell to fix the offense. Eli Holstein's played really well through a few games, but they rally against Cincy last week. They rally against West Virginia. They weren't down 3 touchdowns like they were against Cincy, but they win this game. Some nice wins from Pitt. Really, really well done.
And those are sentiment wins too. Those are wins. Like you said, you come back from being down. What'd you say? 3 scores to Cincinnati. Yeah. You're down double digits with 6 minutes left. The following week, you find a way to win that. Like that's stuff where you, as a coach, like you can go into the film room, you can go into meetings and be like, yeah, X's and O's wise, we could have done this a lot better. We could have ran these plays better. We could have been better in the passing game and the run game. We could have done the package this better, like all of that. But we got a team full of dogs. We got a team full of fighters. So whatever X's and O's, things that we need to make, like that's the easy part. The problem comes from whenever you got guys that lay down or guys that get behind and they just kind of coast the rest of the game, or guys that don't show that competitive spirit, cough, cough, Florida State. You know what I mean? But you got a team full of competitors, a team full of guys that you know are going to fight from the first snap to the final whistle. Like that, as a coach, which granted, I've never coached before, but I can imagine as a coach, that's got to be a good feeling to know that your guys are going to absolutely fight until the end.
Mm-hmm. Wazoo wins the Apple Cup. Props to these boys. Get the win 24-19. Jedd Fisch still trying to kind of find his way at Washington. But Wazoo, we were talking about John Mateer. Unbelievable game for him running around. He is a real deal. Jake Dickert after the game, smoking a cigar, and then said, "Yeah, we said we were gonna win this game not because we hated them, but because we loved each other." Corny or not, I'm sorry, Damien. I liked it. I
was gonna say, whoa, was that corny though? Was that corny? I ain't gonna lie, that sounded like a bar corny, to me.
But also, like,
hold on. Ubben, say it one more time. I want to marinate on that one more again. Say that one more time.
Corny. I think here's the thing. I think in many rivalry games it might have been corny, but I think these games, the Civil War, the Apple Cup, took on so much more meaning because of everything that has happened with conference realignment and the state of these universities. Yeah. Jonathan Smith leaves his alma mater at Oregon State. Jake Dickert's still there, and he's a guy that, he got that job because of the Nick Rolovich, vaccine situation. No, they didn't, he wasn't brought in as this conquering guy. He took that job in a really tough spot, and he has built Washington State, and that is a program that has been giving people fits, and they always they punch above their weight. So props to the Cougs for getting it done there, and also running a speed option to the short side of the field with Will Rogers with the game on the line. I feel like that's one Jedd Fisch wishes he had back.
Yeah,
I suspect
not quite Kansas with that one.
Yeah. Elsewhere, Oregon, we mentioned them a little bit earlier. They snap out of it. They beat Oregon State. I suspect Oregon State might just not be very good. That's what happens when all your players get checked.
I agree.
Listen, Oregon played Idaho. They played Boise close, but the offense was a little bit better in that game. That Oregon offense, I believe they scored on every possession in that game. They looked much, much better. That's a lot like the Oregon that we thought we were going to see. So even if Oregon State's not great, I think that's something Oregon can probably build on in that game.
And again, when we're talking about passing the eye test, which ultimately that's a big part of college football as a whole right now, is getting style points, passing the eye test, right? Even if Oregon State is not that good, like you said, Oregon's offense, they were surgical. I mean, and they told me to shut up because I was one of the guys. I said that this could be one of the most discombobulated games for the Oregon offense for Dillon Gabriel. And they told guys like me and everybody else who thought the same thing, shut up, hold my beer, and watch what I do. And they went out there and, like I said, man, they cut Oregon State up from start to finish. So again, when you look at the eye test, and Oregon State might not be that good, the verdict is still out on Oregon, but at least we can look at them and be like, this is what we would have expected to see from a typical Oregon team against an Oregon State team that's not very good, especially on the road.
Damien, it's time for some accountability for our locks and our trust fall picks. The group chat yesterday for the trust fall picks, it was ugly. I said the circle of trust is currently on fire. Yeah. I believe so. Chris, I think, gave me UAB, or he gave me Arkansas as a 22-point favorite against UAB. That was not even close. Arkansas was trailing early in that game. They did win. And that was also the lock of the week. That also failed. I gave you Michigan. Listen, they were up 28-3 in that game. I said Michigan has a 23.5. That should have hit. They gave up a late score. They gave up another. Yeah, Davis Warren, 3 picks. Legitimately, Davis Warren is the reason that did not hit.
yeah, you have him to thank. Well, I guess I have him to thank.
Yeah, so that was not great. And then you gave Oregon State plus 16.5 to Chris. That one, when Oregon State couldn't cover in the first quarter, I was like, oh, this is not going well.
Not good.
But you did have Memphis straight up. Good pick there. You hit the underdog. And I went off the board. Took Air Force Baylor under 41.5. It was 9 points in the first half. That one was hitting hard. Baylor added some scores late, but I think the final total there was 34. So not a great week for Trust Falls. The locks of the week, some mixed picks there, but we'll see. Let's get to
it'll improve.
Our Heismans and our Criesmans of the week. Damien. Chris is not with us, but Chris, always a team player, traveling back from Corvallis where he was covering that game, gave us his Heisman of the week. His Heisman is the MAC. Toledo rocks Mississippi State.
Okay.
Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame last weekend, but a pretty nice little 1-2 punch from the MAC. My Heisman of the week, Damien, we didn't get to him. Mr. Arch Manning.
Don't do this. Don't, please. Ubben, don't do this to me, Ubben, please.
I felt so bad for Quinn because I like Quinn as much as you do. I don't know that I'm all in on him as the best player in the country just yet, but he's an unbelievable player. He's been a lot of fun to watch. But the reality with Quinn Ewers is he missed a bunch of time with the broken collarbone in 22, 23. I forget what the injury was. He missed 2 or 3 games. Malik Murphy had to kind of navigate that. He's missed some time. And now we have this oblique strain, which is definitely better than it looked. It looked not good live. When you have a non-contact and a guy's like crumpled over, it definitely wasn't lower leg, but it looked, I couldn't tell what it was. It looked like maybe he'd done something to his shoulder, regardless. But an oblique strain, to me, that is worrisome for a lot of reasons because I think you can re-aggravate that. But the good news for Texas is I think they do have the best backup quarterback in the country. Arch, I think he accounted for 5 touchdowns. Throws a touchdown pass on his first pass attempt of the game. Has a 65-yard touchdown run that was, I mean, he shook that safety.
Like that was like that's one of those, like whenever you sit in meetings, all people go bing, 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 bing. Like every time they rewind it back, bing, 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 bing. Hey, coach, run it back one more time, bing, bing.
So I'm with you, Damien, that I think the Arch stuff is a little bit much and it's unfair to Quinn. In the same breath, Arch might be kind of awesome. Like
he is, though. He is. I'm so torn of it. I'm so torn. You know why? Because listen, other than the 67-yard run, Quinn Ewers makes every play that Arch makes.
That's probably fair. Yeah.
Like he does. Like to me, when I look at the two, like Quinn is just a less athletic, less mobile, but more polished overall quarterback just because he's got the experience, right?
And probably ahead of the game mentally, I think. We don't see him make a lot of weird mistakes.
And that's what I mean. Like he's sharper. He's more polished. I would honestly say that Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning are the 2 best quarterbacks in the country. Like, yes, Quinn Ewers, or yes, Archie Manning is the best backup, but I am crazy enough to say that I think that he's better than Shedeur Sanders. I think that maybe not at this exact moment, but like he will absolutely be much better than Dylan Gabriel. Like the kid is good. You know what I mean? So it's hard because again, at the same time though, Quinn is really, really good. And people are salivating at the mouth because they want the young, new, shiny toy. But at the same time, like what Quinn is doing right now, we talked about this on one of our previous episodes. Quinn, arguably, if they win this national championship, if he stays the starting quarterback, he'll be the greatest Texas quarterback maybe since Vince Young. Maybe. Colt McCoy, has an argument.
Oh, if they win the title, it's over. He's right there with Vince, for sure.
He's right there with Vince. You know what I mean? So it's like, and these are things that aren't based on favoritism or anything like that. Like, let's not forget, Quinn Ewers wasn't everybody's favorite quarterback for a while. He was a punk for a while. He didn't have a whole lot of fans. So this isn't like a popularity contest. This isn't like anything made up. Quinn is just really good. It's unfortunate for Quinn that Arch is really, really good. This is a perfect, situation that resembles kind of what happened with Tom Brady and Drew Bledsoe in New England. Mm-hmm. They had just signed Drew Bledsoe to the biggest contract in NFL history. He got hurt in a freak injury. Tom Brady came along. Granted, he didn't have nearly the hype that Archie had, but I mean, he just went out and balled. And the next thing you know, Drew Bledsoe was just the punchline of every Tom Brady joke. And he's just like at all the roasts, like, yeah, haha, you're the guy that lost your spot to Tom Brady because, you got hurt. And then all of a sudden the greatest quarterback of all time got, discovered. So it's a weird deal, man. I hate it for Quinn because he is such a really, really, really good football player. And aside from the Arch Manning conversation, like we keep talking about Quinn Ewers' health, and that's something that NFL teams are going to look at. That's something that, keeps coming up with his name. You know what I mean? And like, again, he's got this injury now. Who knows what's going to happen the rest of the season? And that just opens up more opportunities for Arch. It's a good problem to have for Steve Sarkisian, but at the same time, if you're Archie, you're just living it up because you're just sitting back, getting all the love, all the praise, waiting for Quinn to screw up. And unfortunately, the burden is on Quinn because he is the better player, but he does have to be the better player on every play, and he's got to be available. He's got to be out there every play. I
will say some mild cold water on the Arch thing. Number one, he didn't win the backup job last year. That was Malik Murphy. And two, we have yet to see him play any truly meaningful snaps yet at Texas.
Yeah, he hasn't played a meaningful game yet.
Where there's some pressure, there's a defensive line in his face. I kind of want to see those things. Like I love what I've seen.
And we've seen that from Quinn. But we've seen him handle that well. The Michigan game, again, that game looked so easy for Texas because Quinn Ewers made that game look so easy for Texas. The pressure, the movement in the pocket, the throws on the move, accuracy, like he did all that. It's proven that he can. Alabama last year, he's proven that he can do it. Maybe I'll digress on my Arch Manning as the second best quarterback in the country. I'll wait till he actually plays somebody.
I will say before we get to your Heisman, I have a second Heisman of the week, Curtis Rourke in Indiana. If you have not watched Indiana, you need to do that. They went out to the Rose Bowl, playing in that stadium for the first time since 1967. Beat the crap out of UCLA. UCLA might not be very good.
Hey, dog walker.
Listen, Indiana is just smashing teams. And my Mr. Kurt Signasty coming over from James Madison. Yeah. Indiana, I looked at their schedule last night. The world needs to prepare itself for the possibility of a 7-2, 8-1 Indiana going into the last few weeks this season, because it's a very real possibility. Damien, who is your Heisman of the week?
Yeah, my Heisman of the week is Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, and company because, listen, Notre Dame, they didn't walk themselves back into playoff conversation yet, but they ran all up and down Purdue. I mean, ran all up and down. I mean, 70-yard touchdown right before the half with the second one. Like, I mean, they ran. What did Nick Saban say one day? They ran through our ASS, like SHIT through a tin horn, and we could not stop them. Could not stop them. Could not stop.
I expected Purdue. More from Ryan Walters. I don't know what's going on with Purdue. Like that. Yeah. If you're giving up 66 to this Notre Dame offense, I got some questions about you. So
a lot of questions. I'm with you.
It was impressive. It was a nice way to bounce back from last week. You probably could have used some of those points last week, but
Yeah, like I said, man, they didn't walk themselves back into anybody's playoff bracket. Like I don't even think they fully avenged their loss from NIU. Yeah. But just to see, because Notre Dame is still without a touchdown pass this season. Like, let's not forget, Riley Leonard is still not throwing a touchdown pass. So if that's going to be the case, if you're not going to have any touchdowns through the air, what do you got to do? You got to be able to run the ball. So, Notre Dame, yes, they bounced back. They put up a lot of points. They ran the ball well. They found a way to be successful. So for that, Riley Leonard, 3 rushing touchdowns. Jeremiah Love, over 100 yards, touchdown run, 70 yards, 3 seconds left on the clock before halftime. Carried over the second half. Notre Dame, you're my Heisman of the week. I'll give it to you. I'll show you some love. You've been getting it tough for the last week.
Chris brought his Criesman of the week. We talked about it earlier, gave it to Shane Beamer, South Carolina coach, for playing for a career-long field goal and, of course, missing it. He had about 10 seconds left. I think it was 15 or 20. With a timeout, they just ran the ball, called the timeout, and, of course, missed the 49 field goal. Don't do that.
Kickers aren't proven.
It's true. My Criesman of the week, Damien, we didn't get to this game. Colorado and Colorado State. Braden Fowler Nicolosi was talking wild junk.
A whole mess.
And then on a 2-yard scramble, hits Travis Hunter with the too small, and then throws a pick to Travis Hunter later in the game. I believe he had 3 on the night. Did not look good at any point. Not a real fantastic. If you're gonna talk like that, or whether it was before the season, there seems to be some debate about when this was taped. I think it was before the season.
Whenever. It
doesn't matter. If you're gonna talk like that, you gotta back it up a little bit more. And Colorado State, I didn't see a lot from them. And Torrey Horton,
you know what my mom used to tell me all the time whenever I would talk back to her, or whenever I would say something crazy. She said, all right, don't let your mouth write a check that your ASS can't cash. Don't let your mouth write a check that your ASS cannot cash. And that is exactly what he did, because Colorado came to collect. They came to collect on him. And
Shador were exchanging words after the game.
Him, even Torrey Horton, I saw him, at a point in the game limping off the field. Man, y'all been doing all this talking. Then you want to shake hands after the game. Like, oh, you don't want to shake my hand? Oh, all right, keep talking. Like, you was the one talking.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did Shador say anything about Colorado State all week?
This is where I'm actually on Colorado's side here, because like they do a lot of weird stuff. They do a lot of things that definitely warrant criticism. But for a lot of the stuff, they really don't talk about other people.
They don't trash talk other people. They talk about how great they are, not how bad other people are.
Yes. And so, like, a lot of it is, like, when somebody's coming to them, they might respond. They've kind of come in and out, depending on some certain situations they have or not respond. But they never start anything.
No.
I don't know. I mean, I know why people don't like Colorado, but it definitely, it seems like people are coming for them. In like, that, we talked about on the Pick Show, that quote, and that was like, I have not heard anything like that in college football.
And and that's exactly why, like, I'm gonna tell y'all right now, as a player, as a guy who was a leader in a locker room before, that's exactly why you don't do stuff like that. Because it comes back and just slaps you, dog, like straight across your own face. Like, what did I say in the show earlier this week, Ubben? With those comments, with that video, what did they do? They took all the pressure off Colorado, all the heat off of Colorado, and they put it on themselves. So if you do that and then you don't go out and perform, what do you look like? A damn fool. And what do these guys like? What does this guy look like? He looks like a fool. He looks like a fool. And this is related. Like, didn't play well. Like, we can start there. Didn't play great at all. But even regardless of how you play, we're not talking about how you play. We're just talking about the fact that you look like a moron, dude. And I'm speaking from the heart right now, because like stuff like that really like grinds my gears. At least if you gonna talk about it, be about it. If you gonna like show up on Saturday, come hell or high water, because I play with guys who do talk that talk and who do go out and they say what they're going to do and they say how they're going to beat you and they say, yeah, you're not that good. And what do? They go out and they show it, because once you talk a game like that, you got to go play a game like that. So again, this is a message out there to the kids, to the parents whose kids grow up playing sports and are competitive. If you are not going to back it up, keep your mouth closed.
Is it different?
I promise you, it's better. It's better to under-promise and over-deliver. I assure you of that.
Is it different if a guy's talking trash on the field versus talking trash like with a camera in his face or on social media, like, the week of the game?
It's all the same, because it ain't nothing but hot air. Them words, whether it's before the game, whether it's during the game, those words do nothing as far as the game of football, because at the end of the day, whenever the ball is snapped and we playing in between the whistles, we not doing no talking. Like, our pads are doing the talking, our play is doing the talking. So it's like, if you ain't, again, don't talk about it if you're not going to be about it. Don't start with none, it won't be none. Like, you could have gone out and played this game and played the exact same way, not played well, thrown a pick to Travis Hunter, done the whatever. And then you go into the next week like, listen, I need to be a better quarterback. Like, I need to play better. I need to work on this. I need to work on my reads a little bit better. But now you got to sit here and figure out your image. Like, you got to rebrand yourself. Now you're just looked at as the guy who just got clowned. And I mean absolutely clowned. Post-game, trying to shake Shadur's hand. You got clowned. They got that video from every angle. You just got clowned by the ultimate front running, the ultimate front running team. Like you just, it's all bad. I could talk about this forever. Next subject.
Damien, who's your Criesman of the week?
My Criesman of the week. Oh my God, poor DJ Douglas. I mean, if anybody was watching the Texas A&M game, if you saw the move that Marcel Reed put on DJ Douglas, oh my goodness, that looked like something that I would see James Harden do. That looked like something I would see Kyrie Irving do. Like the bing, 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 the hezzy between, tween, bing, bing. Like, and to miss the tackle the way he did, I mean, had the dude looking like a had him looking like a werewolf trying to catch up to him. I mean, dude ended up on the ground like 2-3 times without touching nobody. So, my man, we need to get you in some open field tackling drills, my man. And you know, it's funny because whenever they do the open field tackling drills at teams, you know, in NFL and college, they usually leave the quarterbacks out of it. If I was him, I'd be, Coach, give me a tell DJ Lagway to we need some one-on-one open field tackling drills. Coach, help me, please. And if I was the coach, well, honestly, if I was Billy Napier, I'd be worrying about a lot of other things. But yeah. if I was anybody in his corner, I'd be like, listen, go grab DJ Lagway and do some one-on-one tackling drills. Because if you ever look like that on the football field again, my boy, I don't know if anybody will pick you up. I don't know if anybody's gonna touch you. I don't know if anybody's gonna want something like that. Because listen, DBs are already known to not be able to tackle. So, and then you go out there and put something like that on tape against a quarterback. Criesman.
Tough. That's tough. Criesman. That's tough. Well, guys, it's been a great show. It's we had a lot of rivalry week. Part 1 was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Let's do it again next week. Damien, what do you think? Yep. What do you think? We got another good set of games this week.
Yeah, that's been it. And every week in college football. You know, David, you actually had one of the best tweets that I think I've ever read. Because you said and I'm not gonna quote it perfectly, but you said something about the greatest thing about college football is every week there's gonna be a game that somebody remembers for the rest of their life, right?
Yeah.
You said something like that. And that when I read that, I was like, yo, that is so true. Like that is every week, and especially now we're talking about playoff implications and we're talking about style points. We're talking about how important these games are. Like, that's the beauty of college football, man. Every week 4 is going to be better. Week 5 is going to get better. Like the rest of the season, there's already been so much action in these first 3 weeks. I mean, look at FSU and look at Michigan, but then on the flip side, look at NIU and look at some of these Boise State, Ashton Genty. Like there's stories all over. There's so many great things, so many great players, like just so much great things to watch for in college football. So, man, I'm just glad to be able to do this show with you guys and do recaps, make picks, and just enjoy all that college football has to offer.
I think this week that title goes to Wazoo and probably Billy Napier, but for a different reason. I've never had 80,000 people screaming for me to lose my job. That doesn't seem like the greatest experience, but I don't think he'll forget that anytime
But I
soon.
guarantee you would walk through that fire for $26 million.
Yes, I would. You can say whatever you want about me for $26 million. I would
call
do that
me worse. Call me worse. Say worse things about me.
Well, we will see you guys again on Wednesday. If you have not subscribed to the show, fix that. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, all that stuff. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You can see our smiling faces and my background, which is pure white. We have our whiteboard here at
and I'm pure black.
Yeah, so there we go. Yep, we got a little yin and yang thing going on here with me and Damien. But subscribe to us. Leave us a voicemail, 316-462-9852. It's great hearing from you guys and featuring them as part of the show. It's been good. Damien, I'm excited for another week of college football.
Yes, sir. You and me both.
It's going to be good. All right, we'll see you guys on Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in.
And always, as always.
Oh, and always, remember, bring back the turnover chain. Look at Damien. Yeah. He's catching me.
Hey, run it back. See, I caught you off guard. Nah, do it again. Do it again. This is our signature end of the show. Hit it again, Ubben.
All right. As always, we will see you next week. And remember, kids, bring back the turnover chain. Do it, Mario. Do it. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.